I'm Jake Bruton, and today on the Build Show Network, we're going to talk about this standing seam metal roof and all the choices that were made at our hilltop house with this roofing. Let's do it now. Okay, so when we start our conversation about metal roofs, there's basically two kinds of metal roofs that you're going to find in the United States, or that I'm familiar with, that we've worked with before. Number one is what we call a pro rib or a barn metal roof. That is, that's what you see on pole barns or post frame buildings that are, it's ribbed metal. Most of the time it comes in 36-inch wide panels, and the last rib in the panel lays out and the other rib lays on top of it. All of its waterproofing just comes from a simple lap. I have seen contractors attempt to seal that, you know, run a bead of silicone all the way down and then lap it on there. You're going to be hard pressed to find a silicone that is high temp enough that you can just use it in the middle of the field on a metal roof, and it just doesn't really matter, because if you seal that, you still are going to poke hundreds of holes in it, like 60 to 80 screws per 100 square foot or something like that. It gets screwed through the surface. The washer on the screw can work. It can be a waterproof system. If you think about all the barns in the United States that are built that way, plenty of them are waterproof. The majority of them are waterproof. But when we're talking about a house, our assembly indoors is just that much more sensitive. You know, a barn, you might have a roof leak that leaks onto the hood of a tractor that's made to be outside. Here, I'm pretty sure we don't want it leaking onto our stovetop downstairs or on our hardwood floor, so we don't want to take that risk. That little washer can be, you know, canted. If the screw goes in slightly crooked, it might not seal from the start. It might be a 5 to 10 year washer. That rubber washer is waterproof, or can be, but it's a much higher risk assembly than this type of roof. And this type of roof is called a standing seam roof, which means this seam stands up. It's not flat, it's not that lap seam, and it's actually crimped. So the way that this works is we have a high temp fully adhered underlayment that's also over top of our zip sheathing that's taped, and then the panels are laid in place and fastened so that all the screws are hidden. So one panel goes down. Let's see if we can figure out which way. Okay, so the panel, they would have started on that edge and worked their way this way. This panel has a clip underneath that gets fastened with a flathead screw, or a screw that lays flat, and then the next edge is locked in place and crimped over. So you get this mechanism, and you get it, you know, 1.5 inches up. So we have a fully mechanically fastened, if we can, I guess we'd call that a mechanical connection, and hidden fasteners on the entire roof. So the whole thing, there are no penetrations. So I'm going to push for a standing seam metal over the pro rib metal or the barn metal any day of the week. But let's talk about why we chose to use it here at our hilltop house. Number one, our slope. So you can't install a shingled, an asphalt shingled roof on anything under, I believe it's a 312. It might actually be 3.5 12, and it's check with the manufacturer. It's written in the code, but the manufacturer is who's going to govern that. We have a 112 slope here, so we have a really low slope roof that we have to use something other than standing seam, or other than asphalt shingles. So we have the opportunity here to use an EPDM roof, or which would be a rubber roof, or a TPO, but we chose metal because we think that it's going to look a little nicer. Now, you really can't see it from anywhere. There's just a couple little spots, but where you can see it, it is important to have something that's very pretty up here. A couple other items of note on this roof. There are two different ways that they seal the or fasten the edge, the roof edge. Some subcontractors will run the roof edge out, over and down, and then clip the end of their metal panel into that. I think that that's unattractive because it pushes our roof metal beyond the fascia, and it causes just a little bit more of a lip that then we have to deal with. I would rather use a roof metal that stops with the fascia. So this installer, this manufacturer, this came from Sheffield Metals. The roof edge comes up like normal and protects the edge of our roof, or that transition from roof to fascia. And then their starter strip, which is just a piece of metal, is mounted on top of that, and then our standing seam starts on top of that and clips into that. So you have a very flush look at the edge of the roof. It's a really good assembly for everything is just kind of clean and nice. One of the other aspects that you can see for the lack of fasteners is our rake and trim. It's all latched into place. All the fasteners are hidden. Everything is locked in and snap locked just like the panels on the roof, and therefore we have a waterproof assembly without any penetrations. Now I want to show you two very interesting details. Let's do that now. So detail number one that I think is super important here. This roof, we're at the end of a 40-foot long run, and we're a 112 pitch here. Code says that that won't vent, so you shouldn't be doing a vented assembly. We make a constant argument that a vented assembly is a drying assembly, and we're going to push for that all the time. So one of the things that Steve Basic and I worked out on this, Steve gets more credit than I do, on this roof is this is a 40-foot run to a sidewall. So we have a double roof assembly here, which means trusses, roof sheathing. That roof sheathing is perforated so that it can vent from the truss space above it. 2x4s on top, and then another layer of roof sheathing that all feeds up to here. It feeds into this channel here. They have their standard ridge vent bug screen material underneath. That roof can now vent out right here. We did a test the other day. We put the, on our garage, which has the same assembly, we put the fog machine in, and it took 10 seconds for the fog to run from the overhang out this vent. So we know that the vent assembly is working. So we have a double roof assembly here that allows us to vent a 112 that dies into a sidewall. Everywhere else, like above me, we just have venting from soffit to soffit in an uninsulated void that we left by our insulation blocking and everything. So we have a 112 vented assembly roof that also doesn't have any penetrations in it. Let's go look at the last detail. Okay, detail number two that I think we really knocked it out of the park and really considered durability on this roof is we don't have any roof penetrations anywhere on the house or the garage building. Everything is a sidewall penetration. So you see two vents and a radon vent, two plumbing vents and a radon vent. And even our wires for the future satellite are all out the soffit and will be managed to turn up. We'll paint all these so that they're protected from UV, and they'll just vent above the roof at the appropriate height. But they didn't poke through this 50-year roof from Sheffield. It's something that I've always had kind of a philosophical problem with, like let's put a roof and then let's poke holes in it. I get that it can be done. I get that it can be reliable. I get that the penetration can be just as reliable as the roofing membrane if it's done correctly. This is fail-safe. I don't have to worry about this getting through the roof and causing problems. We've even poked them through high enough that they'll probably never even get wet at their wall connection. They're above our air barrier inside, so all of the liquid flash from Zip that you see on there is just to take care of the water or possible water. So we've chosen a few details here to make durability kind of our key. It's a 50-year roof. We don't want to damage this thing. We don't want to poke holes in it. So we're venting. We're considering the installation with things like our overhang and how our seams attach. We're considering which metal roof we use so that we don't have a ton of screws through the roof with little rubber washers that can fail. And then we're venting that 112 and we're not poking holes in it. So consider a metal roof. Consider Sheffield. They're fantastic. They were great to work with. This stuff just comes in a coil. They run it on a machine just like they would gutter stock. And our installers, Excel Metalworks in Versailles, Missouri, those guys were fantastic. They knocked it out of the park here as well. We couldn't be happier with this roof. Don't forget, subscribe to that newsletter because every Friday morning you get an email from Mr. Reisinger telling you about all the new content on the Build Show Network. I learn stuff every week. I enjoy watching all the videos that we have online. New content every single week. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, and thanks for watching the Build Show.